She is a spiritual mentor, Reiki practitioner, writer, and artist, currently gaining her bachelor's degree in the science of psychology and studies beyond her academic accomplishments in the effort to link science with spirituality. Her journey consists of guiding others in discovering that we all have an innate ability to create the life that aligns with our soul's purpose and identifying some of the challenges that prevent us from expanding in consciousness. She has found that there are obstacles potentially brought on by various forms of conditioning that prevent us from discovering our authentic selves beyond one's personality. Her services are relative to assisting others during their healing process and guidance on how reprogramming limiting subconscious beliefs is life-changing, all in the effort to guide you towards your truest potential. So please welcome Charlene.
Thank you, Felicia. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Welcome everybody, thank you for coming this evening. Today I'm going to take you on a brief journey of the human mind, how it functions, and touch on the power of thought and my perspective as a result of studying science and psychology, understanding a little bit about how we operate on a cellular level, and trying to link that to our spiritual growth and awareness. So I feel that life is truly mind over matter. How we perceive the world around us has the ability to influence our beliefs, and those beliefs are then planted into our subconscious mind. They essentially mold how we view the world around us and can have a powerful effect on our spiritual growth and our physical growth as well. Creating a life of conscious design I think is vital, and understanding how the mind operates is so important in doing that. You can become more in touch with your desires, your goals, your aspirations, and your passions without being limited by the beliefs that are held in your subconscious mind that you might not be aware that they're there lingering around. So I want to touch on a few components before we get into comparing the minds and kind of lead up to that. So I'll probably state the obvious for most of us, that your brain is not your mind. It's gray matter that is safely protected by your skull. It is the main organ in your central nervous system and can be referred to as your central processing system. Now, let's see here. So for the sake of this presentation, I'd like to refer to the brain as like a computer, and your mind is essentially the external hardware, and there's different programs running, which is your software. Okay, so the mind is a set of cognitive faculties, including consciousness, perception, thinking, judgment, and memory. There's really no universal agreement on what defines the mind and what makes you able to distinguish it, or even a location of it, although there are several inquiries among different religions and philosophy and cognitive science and psychology that might resonate with different people and what the mind, where it really is and what its characteristics are. But the good thing is we do have an understanding of how it functions to a pretty vital degree. So your mind can be likened to an iceberg, and it's often depicted this way in psychology. The tip of the iceberg represents your conscious mind, so your conscious awareness, what you think, feel, do, what you say, how you perceive the world around you. Well, the bigger, rather larger aspect of the iceberg is the subconscious mind, and that's essentially 90 to 95% active, the conscious mind being 5 to 10%, and these are percentages that are used. So some will break down the mind into further layers. You might hear terms like the preconscious mind, then you have the unconscious mind. Those are just whole other topics, especially the unconscious mind, so we'll just be talking about these two tonight. So the body is a fascinating powerhouse. It's a house of molecular cells vibrating at a very high frequency. A fun fact is that during utero, when a child is being developed, the skins, the brain cells, and the cells of the body are developed from the same embryonic tissue called ectoderm. So that means your brain and your skin is composed of the same cell type. And now there are scientific studies that have proven that the body responds to stimulation of the mind. So the body being an instrument of the mind, you can say. Okay, so how does the mind instruct the body? And this is done through cell communication. We have 50 to 75 trillion cells in our body. Each of those cells have their own small amount of voltage, but when you do the math, it's a rather large amount of voltage. So you're just an energy powerhouse, you can think of. So cells are made of 2/3 water, which makes your body made of 2/3 water. It is mainly composed of molecules such as protein, lipids, and carbohydrates. They are designed to respond to stimulation stimulation from your environment via their receptors. And they also have the same functions as your human body: a digestive system, a reproductive system, and an immune system as well. So your subconscious mind, in saying all of that, your subconscious mind constantly communicates with all of the cells in your body. Okay, so I'm just going to touch on a little bit of neuroscience here. I just want to explain neurotransmitters. They communicate information between neurons through a small gap called the synapse. And they carry chemicals and different hormones between neurons. And so they're basically there to help the brain and the body communicate with one another. So they virtually control all of your body's functions, such as your digesting, breathing, your emotions, feeling, hormones. And again, this happens also on a subconscious level. You don't really have to think about digesting. That would be really difficult if you had to do that. So it has been proven that just by thinking something, your body will release chemicals into the body, these neurotransmitters. And they allow the brain to communicate with parts of itself and the nervous system. So every single thought produces a temporary or lasting chemical change in the body. So you can think of when we practice gratitude. It releases like rewarding neurotransmitters, these rewarding chemicals, much like dopamine. And you could also think of like your favorite foods or your favorite place to go, and you might have some sensations. So there are also studies that have shown that vision and fitness and even strength can be improved to some degree by our thoughts alone. This is a body heat wave scan here at the bottom. It shows where our body projects different emotions in our body. And so you can see that our feelings, our emotions are a physical manifestation, and you can look these up also. They're called body heat wave scans. Okay, James Allen, if you haven't heard of him, I'll just put in a note that you can find his audiobooks on YouTube. You can download his PDF books. He's physically long gone from us now, but he has some extremely valuable information that's very empowering. So he says, a particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce results on the character and circumstance. A man cannot directly choose his circumstance, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly, yet surely shape his circumstances. Okay, so with all that being said, I'm just leading to the fact that we have a mind that perceives the world around us, providing us awareness of our environment, and we have another mind that virtually controls everything else. So they both work together to form, I guess you can say, your program and keep you alive, essentially. In this program, you can rewire, you can change. Nothing's really set in stone. You know, there's many areas for us to grow and evolve. So this is a quote from William James. He's known as the father of American psychology, and a powerful statement that the power to move the world is in the subconscious mind, and I am just led to believe there's a lot of truth in that. Okay, so now we're actually going to discuss the mind and compare and contrast. So we have the conscious mind, which we mentioned is 5 to 10% active. It's responsible for your logical, rational reasoning and your creativity. So this is where you have your goals and your aspirations, your hopes, and even where you can generate your fears as well. And it is extremely creative. You know your conscious mind can create wonderful stories throughout your day, so it's very creative. Now the subconscious mind is about 90 to 95% active because it has a whole lot more work to do. So it's literal, it thinks literal, and it's mainly there to help you survive and goes according to your second nature habits. So those 50 to 75 trillion cells we discussed, the subconscious mind is essentially a commander for a lot of those chemical responses to keep us going and respond to our environment. Now an important, I've found this to be important, that our subconscious mind is literal, right? So it holds our deep-rooted beliefs, our values, and our comfort zones. So you have your conscious mind, who is very creative. You have your desires and goals and aspirations, but when you have these deep-rooted beliefs that might have come along the way throughout your life journey that might make you feel you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you tend to revert back to your comfort zones. You know, for example, if you wanted to go bungee jumping and you might have some comfort issues with that, you might talk yourself out of it. Whereas there are people who really feel they have no limits and they'll go beyond what many of us would do without even blinking. So the conscious mind is extremely personal. It uses words as tools and can articulate them. This is why we form languages within our culture. It perceives the world through the 5 senses, and of course there's many of us who believe we have that 6th sense located in our pineal gland, who also picks up in our environment through our psychic abilities or intuition as well. And now the subconscious mind uses limited vocabulary and does not articulate words and thinks in terms of images and feelings. And I think this is important when we get to discussing affirmations and reciting our affirmations. Essentially, we're speaking to the wrong mind. We're speaking our words to our conscious awareness. But there are other techniques that allow you to speak directly to your subconscious, where those beliefs actually are, and it can recognize and say, oh, you're trying to change something. But it's literal. So if you're saying an affirmation and there's not a whole lot of belief behind it, it's just one of those things that I think is important for people to be aware of how to communicate to the subconscious. And there are ways through muscle testing, and there's also, I've heard if you write down your affirmations is very effective as well. The subconscious mind is impersonal and non-selective. So it does not reject anything it receives through the 5 senses. So it has no sense of humor and no feelings. It's highly receptive to feelings, but it does not process them. It's interesting to think of the subconscious, how it communicates with these images. So you can say to yourself, gosh, I feel scared, or I'm worried, or I'm in fear of something, and you might go to sleep and have a dream of a monster chasing you or something really random, and you wake up and you're like, gosh, what is that supposed to mean? Well, it's probably your subconscious communicating with you, because that's the way it knows how to do it. It will pull images, whether they're relevant to what you're experiencing or not, that reflect how you are feeling. The conscious mind controls voluntary functions. So if you wanted to move your leg or move your arm, like I talk a lot with my hands, so these are voluntary functions. Whereas the subconscious mind controls habitual functions. Walking, could you imagine if you had to teach yourself how to walk every day, tell yourself what foot to put in front of the other? It would be very consuming of your time. So fortunately you have a subconscious that does that for you, because that was learned way back when and put into your program. Now, I don't know if you've ever had those moments driving where I call them autopilot, where you're driving down a familiar highway and then you kind of snap back to your awareness and you're like, well, gosh, who the heck is driving the car right now? Your subconscious was driving the car because it's something you're familiar doing and there was no threats around, anything that posed as a threat, so it's kind of like your GPS mechanism. So the conscious mind, according to psychologists, develops around the age 6 or 7 years old. Prior to that, you are operating via the subconscious mind. It's absorbing information, not just from when you're born, but also when you're in utero phases. It's picking up data from your parents, especially the mother, and starting to build a program. The subconscious mind is active rather early, far before childbirth. So I'm going to read a section here from an article by Bruce Lipton, and maybe many of you have heard of him, but he's a cellular biologist, and he has done a lot of studies of how beliefs alter our biology, and is rather amazing. So I'm just going to read this portion here. The predominant delta and theta activity expressed by children younger than 6 signifies that their brains are open but at levels below consciousness. Delta and theta brain frequencies define a brain state known as hypnagogic trance, the same neutral state that hypnotherapists may use to directly download new behaviors into the subconscious mind of their clients. Between 2 and 6 years old of age, the child's brain activity ramps up and operates primarily in the theta range. While in this state, the kid spends much of their time mixing the imaginary world with the real world. So in saying that, during your time of growth between, before the ages of 7, that's why they say children are like sponges. They're built to absorb information, to essentially learn how to survive and adapt to their world. Whereas, 6 or 7, we start to learn more repetitively. We have to write our ABCs over and over again. We have to learn how to read over and over again. We begin to have to learn by repetition because we're on a more conscious level. So, let's see here. So another thing to point out is that in that stage of running under the subconscious mind, there is really no ego there. There is no need for continuity or an identity. That's usually the role of the ego, and it's essentially a tool of your conscious mind. Kind of wants you to survive and be successful and do all these things in your environment. But kids aren't really interested in that at a young age. They just want to learn. So that's kind of gives you an idea of how the subconscious works. This can also be relative to childhood conditioning. That's a whole other topic in and of itself, but that's why it's important because children are learning what's acceptable, what's unacceptable in their environment, and picking up on everything, and nothing really passes the subconscious in that stage. Okay, getting close here. I hope I'm not throwing too much at you guys. Okay, so the conscious mind is responsible for your short-term memory. So they say it's about 20 seconds. And long-term memory resides in your subconscious mind. Now again, you can get deeper into this and consider the unconscious, which in the Jungian theories, Carl Gustav Jung, he was really big in the unconscious and all the things that reside there. Your conscious mind has finite storage space. It stores up to 2,000 bits of information per second, which seems like a lot until you compare it to the subconscious mind infinite storage space, and stores up to 4 billion bits of information per second. And you might be thinking, well, gosh, I don't really do a whole lot in my life. I don't know where all these billions of bits of information are coming from. But an important thing to note is that your subconscious, according to studies, is not limited to your awareness. It can communicate with the other subconscious minds around you, and they're always communicating with each other. So an example would be if you have a friend or a partner you're very close with, you might be able to finish their sentences or say something before they do, or can just pick up on how they're feeling, because again, the subconscious mind can pick up and is very receptive to feelings. So the conscious mind is bound by time, and it thinks past and future. This is why we are reminded so much when we do our spiritual practices to be present. And the reason why is because our conscious mind is wired to think both past and future. And so we sometimes have to put in a little more conscious effort into being more present. And an example would be, if you had something happen 30 years ago and it was either a traumatic experience or it was a very wonderful experience, when you think back consciously, you're considering the time it happened. Whereas your subconscious is not bound by time and it thinks present moment only. So say you have this 30-year-old experience that has created a program or some kind of limited belief, to your subconscious that's happening now. There's only things in the present. So that's when the limited beliefs can be a huge issue if, because to your subconscious it's happening now and it might project itself into your perceived reality. Of all the things the subconscious does do for us, there's one thing that it cannot do, and that is, that we know of anyway, that is it does not distinguish something that is real from something that is imagined. It doesn't know the difference. This is not an opinion or a guess. Psychologists have confirmed this in experimental laboratories. It's actually a proven theory that that's how the subconscious works. And I feel, there's a lot of power into that. They say the power of, why they say never own an illness, never say I am this. The power in the word I am is extremely powerful, that you will become that. And your mind will respond and communicate with the cells in your body. So these are just some questions to ponder. Why my affirmations won't work? Why is it so hard to break a habit? Is the universe now providing circumstances are not in my favor? Am I missing the lesson? Why do I feel motivated 1 minute and then I'm right back to feeling low? Like if you've gone to a motivational seminar and it's just, you feel the energy and everything's great and you're ready to make all these changes, and then when the motivation seminar's over, so is the motivation. Our comfort zones and our beliefs have a way of reeling us back in until we can effectively communicate with them. And it's not always just reciting affirmations all the time. But again, there are other ways of communicating with the subconscious and reprogramming yourself that way. And might I add, everybody's healing journey is different. This is not something that is set in stone. This is information that I found useful for myself, for anybody I've mentored, and that I just feel more people should know about. So by becoming more consciously aware of what beliefs, emotions, and comfort zones are beneath your conscious awareness, especially the limiting ones, you can begin to understand your behaviors, or why are those why questions. Are you living in fear, or are you living in love? Are you feeling like you can take on the world, or are you feeling like you're not good enough and you're not worthy for success? All those things can be a reflection of deep-rooted beliefs that you may not even be aware of. But the good news is, like I said, you can rewire your program just as you would a computer chip. Delete anything that no longer serves you. All experiences in your life has served some purpose for you, and it's great that they come up, but sometimes they stay around for a little too long. And by saying you can just erase them, maybe it sounds easier said than done, but perhaps we have made it in some way more difficult than it really has to be, and really drawing out the process. So in saying all this, I want to reiterate, I don't want anyone to feel that you are a victim in any way to your subconscious mind, even though it is 90 to 95% of what's going on. I'm actually saying you're extremely powerful. You can create your reality, you can change those beliefs, and you can take on the world if you wanted to, but it's just a matter of that proper communication and creating a new understanding of this healing process in some regard. Why is Know Thyself embedded in philosophy and spirituality? I'm going to read just a bit of a blog that I wrote on Know Thyself, and I have some information at my table. You can find these blogs on my website. But Know Thyself, commonly attributed to Socrates, is found within many ancient sources and essentially is the root of all philosophy. This term has been woven over time and eras through various cultures and religions, spanning spiritual and scientific teachings, as well as appearing in art and in literature. So what is the significance? Self-knowledge is indeed timeless, and it is said to be the highest form of knowledge. Knowing who you are and understanding who you are on a higher thinking perspective opens up a gateway to personal intelligence and a sense of inner knowing. So when you feel you're ready, don't be afraid to go into those deeper levels of consciousness. And if you feel you need assistance in doing that, there's lots of resources out there and many healers and practitioners that can assist you in doing that. But know that you do also have the power to make the changes from within. And it's important to not expect those changes to just come out of nowhere, but to maybe start inward and it will reflect outward. And you may find the answers that you're seeking secretly when you go into those deeper levels. Okay, just almost wrapping it up here. A Wayne Dyer quote, the more you see yourself as what you like to become and act as if what you want is already there, the more you'll activate those dormant forces that will collaborate to transform your dream into a reality. Okay, so I like to say that you are like a garden, an extremely magnificent, powerful, energetic garden. Okay, your conscious mind is the gardener. And I feel this is all about thinking more consciously on a higher level. Your subconscious is a massive garden. What new seeds do you want to plant there? What weeds or limiting beliefs do you want to remove from there? You have the ability to plant new seeds and experience a life of conscious living. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everyone for letting me talk about this with you, and I hope some or all of it, or even a little tiny bit, was valuable to you. So.